Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of I'm not exactly sure what I'm going to call this yet. Today we're going to talk about Google Forms. Now, Google Forms is a fantastic tool for collecting information and giving assessments, but we really can't overlook its ability to be used as a creative learning tool. With a little bit of effort, you can take a Google Form and use it to create a fun choose your own adventure activity or a simulation. Any of these activities that really help students practice skills, learn new things, and maybe even have a little fun. Let's check it out. All right, so first, the basic structure of a Google form. Teacher or editor creates questions. Those questions can be broken down into sections, and students or users of the form go through question by question in a fairly linear order. That's at its very basic. Now, if you're able to break your form down into multiple sections, you can then add multiple choice questions using the feature go to based on answer. What that allows you to do is direct your users to different sections of the form based on the answer that they give. They can skip sections, they can go back into other sections in the form. You can create a cycle where they repeat the same section until you get the response that you want from them. You can direct them to a section that helps them review material and then go back to the section that they were previously on so they can get a correct answer. There's really a lot of options, a lot of really cool ways that you can use this feature to make some interesting pathways on your form. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about a form that asks a question, and correct answers to that question will progress the student or the user to another question, and incorrect answers to that question will instead send them to a new section where they get to review. So I've set up a form that presents a bullying scenario. We have a couple of boys in this picture that those of you who are listening on the podcast can't see. Picture presents some boys making fun of another boy for his weight. Users of the form are presented with four options. They can choose to join in. They can choose to go get an adult. They can choose to ignore the situation, or they can choose to intervene. Okay, so two of those options are proactive options that get the kid to make a good choice to stop bullying. If I select either of those options and then hit next, I will be moved on to another question. However, if I choose the option to join in or choose the option to ignore, I'll be sent to a section of the form that tells me that I didn't make a choice that prevented bullying. And then I get the opportunity to review some content. Maybe like I could put a YouTube video here or an article about why bullying is bad or how we can stop bullying. And then when I've selected yes, I've interacted with this content, I go back to the original question and get to choose again. If I select no, I have not interacted with this content, and click next, I'm actually just brought right back to this spot. So I'm sort of trapped in a loop where I'm forced to take this learning activity. And then when I'm done with that, I go back and try the original question again. Great way to get students to, first take chances in giving their answers, review some content if they get it incorrect, and then give them a second shot. So now the form's not just grading them, it's helping them learn. All right, so the next type of choose your own adventure form we're going to look at is a simulation. Actually, I've gone ahead and created a rock cycle simulation. On this form, there are various stages of the rock cycle, and then what can happen to material at that stage. For example, any type of rock can be melted if it's exposed to enough heat. It can be buried and exposed to heat and pressure to become, a metamorphic rock, or it can be broken down by weathering and erosion and then deposited somewhere else. So all these options are on the form. This is actually going to be more of like a game type thing, though I stress that it's not really a game because there's no objective to win. Students are going to work through this form by rolling a die. And whatever number they get on that die corresponds to the question or the answer that they choose on the form. And then what then happens to their rock. So, depending on what number they roll, they select a different option on the form, and then they progress to a different phase. So students will do this for probably like, I guess it depends on your students, but 10 to 20 rolls. They record what happens to their rock along its journey, all the times that it was melted and then solidified and then, became a new igneous rock and then was weathered and eroded and became some sediment, and that sediment was deposited and became a sedimentary rock. They'll record all of that, and then they'll compare it with their peers at the end and see that the rock cycle is not really much of a cycle. But now you have this form that creates a different experience for each kid. It's got this interactive piece, kind of fun piece where they're rolling the die, and they get to learn about the nature, the non-cyclical nature of the rock cycle. This can be used for, I tend to lean towards science, but a whole lot of different scenarios, cycles or random events type situations can be demonstrated in a form like this. All right, now this last option sort of combines the student choice from the first option and the random dice roll from the second option to create like a legitimate choose your own adventure type experience. I would imagine that this is a great tool for like a literature class. I don't know about you guys, but when I was a kid, I read a lot of choose your own adventure books, being a huge nerd and all. So I imagine literature teachers sort of implementing that style where they're getting the kids to read and move through a form based on some choices that they make, maybe not a learning activity, but just a love of reading type activity. And they can still discuss a whole lot of the, basic literature type features or, what's the theme of the book, even though you get to still choose your own type of activity in there. I also envision, with some student training, creating a love for writing by allowing students to create the form where they develop the own choose your own adventure type things and then present that to their peers to work through. So in this type of activity, you'll have probably, a big long description that actually presents the literature part, and then a combination of choice questions and random selection questions. So you might have a choice where, the student is playing the role of whoever the main character is, the protagonist in the story, and they choose to take an item that might be cursed. They progress on to the next section, and later on, they're asked, did you select this item? And then that will have some negative or positive consequences on them. You might have an opportunity where they're in a battle with something in their story, and they have to roll a die. And whatever the number on the die is depends what they select and determines the outcome of that battle. Really neat way to get students engaged, especially if you give them the ability to create these things. Probably introduce it to them sort of by a teacher created choose your own adventure first, and then invite them as like a writing project to create one of their own. So they get to sort of see these different pathways that writers envision when they're generating story, and they get to have a little bit of fun while writing. All right, guys. So that's it. There's a couple of cool ways that you can use Google Forms to create some interactive activity, or maybe even have your students create some interactive activity. I hope you enjoyed the episode of this little project that I have still not yet named. If I missed any cool ideas or any cool things that you can do with Google Forms, please find a way to communicate excuse me. Leave a message on the YouTube, or I don't know how messages work on the podcast type thing, but let me know. I'd love to hear what you guys think. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.